we had a lot of guys go crazy, I'm telling you.
Welcome to Alaskan Veterans Remember, our history, their stories. A 1,000-mile string of volcanic islands along the western outer reach of Alaska is the only American soil that saw battle during World War II. Japanese attacks led to the forced internment of Aleut Americans and desecration of their homes and churches. The American air and land campaign centered on the Japanese-occupied islands of Attu and Kiska. By August 1943, the Japanese had left the Aleutians.
And I went into his tent and he was polishing up his rifle. I said, "Sergeant, what are you doing?" "I'm gonna get me some goddamn Japs." He was out of his head.
I'm Katie Bosler. In this installment of our series, we'll hear from two veterans who served in the Aleutian Islands after Japanese forces had already departed. Harold Wheaton oversaw military longshoremen on the island of Shemya for about a year, starting in April 1945. Tom Stewart was an Army captain stationed on the island of Kiska from August to December 1943. Stewart recalls friendly fire claiming lives. American forces were unaware that the Japanese had slipped through the fog just prior to their arrival on Kiska, August 15, 1943.
When we landed on Kiska, the troops were not told that the Japanese were probably not there. We landed expecting to be engaged in fight. And the landing force included, there were 50,000 men involved in that landing. They had 2 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, and about 50 destroyers and DE boats. And all those naval ships were firing their big shells on the island as we went up the hill. So that there was, the sights and sounds of battle were there, but it was spooky because we weren't getting any small arms return fire. It wasn't until noon of the following day, we landed at 5 o'clock in the morning. Noon of the following day, the realization sunk in, there were no Japanese on that island.
And more than 5,000 Japanese had escaped under your nose?
That's right. It was noon of the following day after we landed at 5 in the morning, before the realization came that there were no Japanese on that island. We had some bad experiences. We had some men that were lost to booby traps. They put TNT in cans, covered it over with moss, and had a like a dynamite cap. And if you stepped on the moss, it set off the booby trap. We had a few casualties from that. And the worst thing that happened was on that first night, it wasn't in my battalion, it was in the 2nd and maybe the 3rd battalion. They landed in the center of the island, and the ridge is about 3,000 feet high. They landed on the southwest side and climbed that ridge, and the weather turned bad. It was nice when we landed. Then, as typical of the Aleutians, it heavy rain and wind and bad weather.